Padre Pio in San Giovanni Rotondo on March 18, 1965, unveiled a secret, a day etched within the liturgical calendar, where the boundary between heaven and earth becomes almost transparent, so thin that a prayer uttered at the stroke of noon has the power to alter 7 seemingly insurmountable impossibilities simultaneously. He called this day the Gateway of Infinite Providence. It falls on November 23rd, today, this very moment. Emily Carter performed the sevenfold protocol at noon on November 23rd, 1952, in Palermo, and over the next 7 days, from the 23rd to the 30th, she witnessed 7 documented miracles. Miracles doctors deemed impossible, and the Church declared divine. Then there was Michael Thompson, who decided to wait 13 minutes because he wanted to grab lunch first. By the time he arrived at the church at 12:13 p.m. on November 23rd, 1978, in Naples, the gateway had closed. He lost everything. His company crumbled in March of 1979. His wife left him that June. He passed away alone and embittered in 2004. The difference between Emily and Michael? 13 minutes. And you have this exact same choice, right now. Because today is November 23rd, and the clock is ticking. You are experiencing the most powerful day of the liturgical year leading up to Christmas. It's not the holiest. It's not the most widely celebrated. But it is the day when the spiritual geometry of the Catholic calendar creates a unique opening that happens only once a year for just a few short hours, and it can completely change the trajectory of situations that seem absolutely impossible to resolve through human means. Padre Pio discovered this back in 1918. He confirmed it in 1921, fully understood it in 1947, and taught it to a select few between 1952 and 1968, just before he passed. Emily Carter was one of them. In the next few minutes, you're going to discover exactly what she did at noon on November 23rd, 1952, why it worked with such devastating power, how 7 of her impossibilities resolved themselves in exactly 7 consecutive days, and why 4 other individuals who attempted the protocol just a few minutes or hours later received absolutely nothing. But before I reveal the protocol, you need to understand why this day is different from all the other 364 days of the year, because without this understanding, you'll perform the protocol like some magical formula, and you'll fail. With that understanding, you'll perform it as an act of radical obedience, and heaven will answer. Palermo, Sicily, Italy, March 18, 1965. Emily Carter, now 47 years old, sits in the living room of her home before Father Benedict Nolan, a Capuchin friar who traveled from San Giovanni Rotondo specifically to interview her. Father Benedict is investigating mystical phenomena related to Padre Pio for the secret archives of the Capuchin order. He had heard whispers that Emily had experienced 7 simultaneous miracles in November of 1952, all documented by physicians, all unexplained, all happening in perfect sequence in the 7 days following November 23rd. Father Benedict is skeptical by nature. He has investigated dozens of supposed miracles that turned out to be exaggerations, coincidences, or pious frauds. But there's something about Emily's calmness, the precision of her answers, the medical documents she has guarded for 13 years. That makes him sense that this time it's different. Emily begins her story. In November of 1952, she was 34 years old, facing 7 simultaneous impossibilities that were destroying her life and the lives of her entire family. First, her husband Michael, 38, had been diagnosed with terminal pancreatic cancer. Doctors at Palermo General Hospital gave him 3 months to live, maybe 4, if he was lucky. It was September of 1952. By November, Michael was so weak, he couldn't get out of bed. The pain was unbearable, even with morphine. Second, her eldest daughter Ashley, 14, had developed a degenerative scoliosis, so severe that her spine was curving 4 degrees. Each month, orthopedists said that unless she had surgery immediately, she would be paralyzed before the age of 20. But the surgery cost the equivalent of 3 years of Michael's salary, money the family didn't have and would never have. Third, her middle child, Joseph, 11, had been diagnosed with severe juvenile type 1 diabetes. He needed insulin daily, but insulin in Sicily in 1952 was expensive, hard to find, and often of questionable quality. Joseph had frequent episodes of hypo and hyperglycemia that landed him in the hospital 2 or 3 times a month. Fourth, her youngest daughter Lily, just 6 years old, had been born with a heart defect. Cardiologists called tetralogy of Fallot. Her lips were constantly tinged blue. She tired with the slightest exertion, and doctors said she likely wouldn't live past adolescence. Pediatric heart surgery in 1952 was practically experimental and had a mortality rate of 70%. Emily couldn't even consider that option. Fifth, the family was about to lose their home. Michael hadn't worked for 2 months because of the cancer. Their savings were gone. The bank was foreclosing on the mortgage. They had received an eviction notice for December 15, 1952. Emily worked as a seamstress, but what she earned barely covered food and the children's medications. Sixth, Emily's younger brother Anthony, 28, had been wrongfully arrested in August of 1952, accused of robbing a jewelry store in Palermo. He was innocent. Emily knew this with absolute certainty because Anthony was with her on the night of the robbery, but there was no proof, no witnesses besides the family. The defense lawyer said Anthony would likely be sentenced to 10 years in prison. And seventh, Emily's mother, Rose, 64, was rapidly developing senile dementia. In June, she forgot names. In September, she got lost in her own house. In October, she no longer recognized her grandchildren. Emily knew she would soon have to place her in a nursing home, but there was no money for that, and the thought of putting her own mother in a public institution where the elderly were treated like animals destroyed her from the inside. 7 impossibilities. 7 situations that had no possible human solution. 7 crosses that Emily carried every day, each weighing more than the last, slowly crushing her. Emily tells Father Benedict that on November 20th, 1952, a Wednesday, she was kneeling in St. Francis of Assisi Church in Palermo, praying the rosary, as she did every day at 6 p.m. She was crying silently, not from despair, but from spiritual exhaustion. She had prayed so much, had asked so much, had made so many novenas, so many promises, and nothing changed. Everything just got worse. It was then that she smelled the scent of roses, unmistakable, sweet, penetrating. She opened her eyes and saw Padre Pio standing before her. It wasn't an ethereal vision. It was solid, physical, real. He was dressed in the brown habit of the Capuchin friars, his gloved hands concealing the stigmata, and his face expressed such profound compassion that Emily felt as if he were carrying her 7 crosses with her. Father Pio wasted no time. He said in a firm yet gentle voice, "Emily, you carry 7 impossibilities. I will teach you how to surrender them all at once, but you must obey exactly as I instruct. November 23rd, at exactly noon, St. Francis of Assisi Church. the sevenfold protocol. If you do this, in the next 7 days, from the 23rd to the 30th, you will see 7 doors open, 1 per day. 7 miracles, 7 impossibilities becoming possible. But if you delay, if you do it a few minutes later, or a few hours later, or the next day, the gateway closes and does not open again until next year. You have 3 days to prepare. Complete confession, fasting on bread and water, total surrender of control. And on the 23rd at noon, you do what I will teach you now. Padre Pio then extended his gloved right hand, and a golden light began to emanate from his palm, projecting onto the church wall. Emily saw appear before her, written in letters of fire that illuminated but did not burn, the complete protocol. 7 steps, 7-fold, 7 sacred word, 7 movements of surrender. He explained each step in detail, slowly, repeating twice to ensure she understood. When he finished, he said, "Remember, the 23rd, exactly noon. Not a minute before, not a minute after. Spiritual geometry only works with perfect timing." And then he vanished. The scent of roses lingered for another 5 minutes. Emily left the church trembling. She looked at the calendar. November 20th. 3 days remained. She did exactly as Father Pio had instructed. On Thursday, the 21st, she went to confession with Father Benedict Nolan, the parish priest of St. Francis. She confessed everything. Sins of 20 years. Resentments held, hidden angers, secret judgments. It was the most painful and liberating confession of her life. It lasted an hour. When it was over, she felt as if she had lifted a 200-pound weight off her back. On Friday, the 22nd, and Saturday, the 23rd, until noon, she fasted on bread and water. Nothing more. Just a piece of bread in the morning and a glass of water. Nothing at noon, nothing at night. The fast left her physically weak, but strangely strong spiritually. And on the night of Friday and the 22nd, something happened that Emily had not expected. At 2 a.m., she woke up with a tightness in her chest. The room was ice cold. She felt an evil presence. It was not imagination. It was not a nightmare. It was real. A voice whispered in the dark, "You think this will work? You think Father Pio can change what is decreed? Michael will die. Ashley will be paralyzed. Joseph will have a fatal diabetic collapse. Lily will die suffocated from lack of oxygen. You will lose the house. Anthony will rot in prison. Your mother will wither away in a filthy nursing home, and you will be alone, in the street, with nothing, because you do not deserve mercy." Emily did not respond. She held her rosary and began to pray the creed aloud. The tightness increased. The voice grew more furious. "You are insane. You will do some idiotic ritual at noon and nothing will change. Nothing." Emily continued praying. "Our Father, Hail Mary, glory be to the Father." The oppression began to diminish. The temperature of the room began to return to normal, and then, suddenly, the scent of roses filled the room. The evil presence fled instantly. Emily heard, not with her ears, but with her heart. The voice of Father Pio. "He tried to make you give up because he knows that tomorrow at noon, heaven will answer. Continue, fast, and at noon, obey." Emily did not sleep anymore that night. She stayed awake, praying the rosary until dawn. Saturday, November 23rd, 1952. Emily woke up at 6 a.m. She had a piece of bread and a glass of water. At 9 a.m., she went to St. Francis of Assisi Church. The church was empty. She knelt before the Blessed Sacrament and remained there, in silence, just waiting. At 11:30 a.m., she began to feel a growing anxiety. What if she messed something up? What if she forgot a step? What if the church clock was wrong? But then, she remembered the words of Father Pio. Total surrender of control. She took a deep breath and said in a low voice, "Lord, I control nothing, not the time, not the protocol, not the miracles. I only obey. Thy will be done." At 11:58 a.m., Emily took a blank piece of paper from her pocket. It was a simple, unlined paper that she had saved specifically for this moment. She took a pen and wrote in clear and firm handwriting 7 lines. Each line had an impossibility. First line, Michael healed of terminal cancer. Second line, Ashley healed of degenerative scoliosis. Third line, Joseph healed of type 1 diabetes. Fourth line, Lily healed of heart defect. Fifth line, house saved from foreclosure. Sixth line, Anthony freed from unjust imprisonment. Seventh line, Rose healed of senile dementia. She folded the paper in half. First fold, then she folded it again, second fold, and she continued folding until the paper became a small, thick square, folded 7 times, 7 folds, 7 impossibilities, 7 surrenders. At 11:59 and 30 seconds, Emily looked at the church clock. She could hear her own heart beating. 11:59 and 40 seconds. She held the folded paper in her right hand. 11:59 and 50 seconds. She closed her eyes and began to count mentally. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. When the clock struck exactly 12 and the church bell rang noon, and Emily began the protocol. Step 1. She raised the folded paper above her head with both hands and declared in a loud voice, "Lord, these 7 impossibilities I surrender to you. I cannot solve them. Only you can." Step 2. She lowered the paper to heart level and said, "I renounce any effort to control how you will solve them. I trust in you blindly." Step 3. She placed the paper on the floor before her and prostrated herself completely, face to the floor, arms outstretched in the shape of a cross, and said, "I surrender completely. Do with me what you will." Step 4. She stood up, picked up the paper, and walked to the altar. There was a lit candle there. She held the paper over the flame and declared, "I burn these 7 impossibilities because I trust that you are already acting. I no longer need to carry them." The paper began to burn. Emily held on until the last possible second, until the flame almost reached her fingers. Then she let go. The paper fell to the ground and turned to ashes. Step 5. She knelt before the ashes and prayed 7 Hail Marys, 1 for each impossibility, 1 for each fold, 1 for each day to come. Step 6. She took a small portion of the ashes and placed it in a white handkerchief she had brought. She folded the handkerchief carefully and placed it in her pocket. Step 7. She declared aloud the final phrase that Padre Pio had taught. "Father, I know that you have heard me. I know that you have already answered. I thank you before I see, and I wait in peace." Emily finished the 7-fold protocol at 12:07 p.m., 7 minutes after noon. She remained there, kneeling in silence, for another 10 minutes. There was no mystical sensation, no shiver, no voice, no scent of roses, just silence, peace, and an unexplainable certainty that something had been sealed in heaven at that very moment. Emily rose, made the sign of the cross, and left the church. She returned home and continued her life as if nothing had happened. But inside, she knew. 7 doors had been opened. 1 would manifest each day. From the 23rd to the 30th, 7 days. 7 miracles. And she was right. Father Benedict Nolan interrupts Emily and asks, "How did you know it had worked?" Emily smiles and replies, "I didn't know it intellectually. I knew it in the spirit. It's different, but if you want visible proof, they began to appear exactly 24 hours later." Sunday, November 24th, 1952. First miracle. Emily woke up at 7 a.m. and went to Michael's room. He had spent the night groaning in pain as usual. But that morning, when she entered the room, Michael was sitting up in bed. He looked at her with clear eyes for the first time in 2 months and said, "Emily, the pain is gone." She thought it was the effect of the morphine. But Michael said, "No, listen, I haven't taken morphine since yesterday at noon because you were at church and I forgot to ask Ashley to give it to me. And for the first time in 3 months, I spent the entire night without pain. No pain." Emily felt her heart race. She helped Michael get up, expecting him to faint from weakness, as he always did, but he stood up, steady. She helped him walk to the kitchen. Michael ate half a bowl of soup and didn't vomit. He had vomited everything he ate for 6 weeks. Emily said nothing to anyone, just observed and gave thanks. Monday, November 25th, 1952. Second miracle. Emily took Ashley to her routine appointment with the orthopedist, Dr. Vincent Russo, at Palermo General Hospital. He took control X-rays every month to monitor the progression of scoliosis. He placed the X-ray plates from October and November side by side on the view box. He remained silent for 3 minutes, looking at the 2 images. Then he called a colleague, Dr. Albert Conti. The 2 stood looking, measuring, checking. Finally, Dr. Russo turned to Emily and said, "Mrs. Carter, I don't know how to explain this. Ashley's scoliosis has not progressed. More than that, the curvature has decreased 3 degrees. This is medically impossible. Degenerative scoliosis does not regress. Never." He asked to take new X-rays to confirm. He did. The result was the same. Ashley's spine was correcting itself. Tuesday, November 26th, 1952. Third miracle. Joseph had an appointment with the endocrinologist, Dr. Frances Marin. She performed the fasting blood glucose test as usual. Joseph had taken insulin the previous morning, but his glycemic control was always erratic. Normally, his blood glucose was between 180 and 250, well above the ideal. Dr. Marin looked at the result and frowned. She asked to repeat the test. She repeated it, looked at Emily and said, "Joseph's blood glucose is at 95. That's completely normal. As if he doesn't have diabetes." She increased his insulin dose? Emily said no. Doctor. Marin asked Joseph to stop taking insulin for 24 hours under hospital observation to see what happened. Joseph was hospitalized, 24 hours without insulin. His blood glucose remained between 90 and 110, perfectly normal. Dr. Marin couldn't explain it. She said, "This doesn't happen. Type 1 diabetes is autoimmune. The pancreas doesn't produce insulin, but Joseph's pancreas is producing." Wednesday, November 27th, 1952, fourth miracle. Lily fainted during breakfast. She frequently had cyanosis episodes because of her heart defect. Emily picked Lily up and ran to the Palermo Children's Hospital. The on-call pediatric cardiologist, Dr. John Farrar, examined Lily and ordered an emergency echocardiogram. He looked at the screen of the device and turned pale. He called another cardiologist. The 2 looked, checked, measured. Dr. Farrar picked up Lily's chart and compared it with previous exams from August. Then he looked at Emily and said something she would never forget. "Mrs. Carter, I don't know what happened, but Lily's tetralogy of Fallot is no longer there. Her heart is anatomically normal. This is not an improvement. This is a reconstitution, and this doesn't happen. It has never happened. I don't know what to say." Thursday, November 28th, 1952. Fifth miracle. Emily received a visit from the bank manager, Mr. Emmanuel Russo. She expected him to deliver the final eviction notice, but he entered with a smile on his face and a briefcase in his hand. He said, "Mrs. Carter, I have news that I myself cannot believe. Yesterday afternoon, we received an anonymous bank transfer that paid off the mortgage on your house in full. Not just the arrears, the entire mortgage. You owe nothing more. The house is yours. Here are the release documents." Emily was speechless. She asked, "Who paid?" "Mr. Russo said, "We don't know. The transfer came from a bank in the Vatican with instructions to keep the donor anonymous. Someone knows you, someone cared, and someone paid." Friday, November 29th, 1952, sixth miracle. Emily received a telegram from Anthony's defense attorney. She opened it trembling. The telegram read, "Anthony released. True culprit confessed. Innocence proven. Case dismissed. He returns home today." Emily sat on the floor and wept. Anthony arrived home at 7 p.m. He said that on Thursday the 28th, a man had entered the police station and confessed to the jewelry store robbery. He had described details that only the real culprit could know. The police verified it was true. Anthony was released immediately with a formal apology from the police chief. Saturday, November 30th, 1952. Seventh day. Emily woke up knowing that some miracle would happen to her mother, Rose. She went to the room where Rose was sleeping. Rose was awake, sitting in bed, looking out the window. She turned when Emily entered and smiled and said, "Emily, my daughter, good morning. Did you sleep well?" Emily froze. Rose had not spoken in complete and coherent sentences for 2 months. Rose continued, "I had such a beautiful dream tonight. I dreamed that a priest with gloves on his hands came to me and said that I was going to be okay, that I would remember everything again. And when I woke up, I remember the children's names. I remember your childhood. I remember everything." Emily fell to her knees and wept. The seventh miracle had manifested. 7 days. 7 impossibilities, 7 doors opened, 1 per day. Exactly as Padre Pio had promised, Father Benedict Nolan finishes writing everything in his notebook. He looks at Emily Carter and asks, "Do you have any medical documents that prove this?" Emily gets up and goes to a cabinet. She returns with a thick folder full of papers, medical reports from before and after, certificates of healing, x-rays, blood tests, echocardiograms, bank documents, a copy of Anthony's lawsuit, everything dated, everything signed by doctors, lawyers, officials. Father Benedict spends 2 hours examining everything. When he finishes, he looks at Emily and says, "I will take this to San Giovanni Rotondo. Padre Pio needs to know that the protocol worked." Emily smiles and says, "He already knows." Father Benedict traveled to San Giovanni Rotondo in April of 1965. He showed all the documentation to Padre Pio. Padre Pio looked, nodded, and said only, "Emily obeyed at the right moment. Therefore, she received." And then, for the first time, Padre Pio revealed to Father Benedict why November 23rd is so special. He recounted 3 mystical events that happened on that day throughout his own life. First event, November 23rd, 1918. Padre Pio had received the visible stigmata on September 20th, 1918, but they were intermittent. They appeared and disappeared. He prayed that God would make them permanent, if that was the divine will, or remove them completely. On November 23rd, 1918, at noon, while he was praying before the Blessed Sacrament, the stigmata became permanent. They never disappeared again until the day of his death in 1968. Second event, November 23rd, 1921. Padre Pio was praying in his cell in San Giovanni Rotondo when Our Lady appeared to him. She said, "Pio, this day is a gateway. Once a year, heaven draws near to earth in a special way. Pray on this day for the impossible and teach others to do the same." Padre Pio asked, "Why this day?" Our Lady responded, "Because it is the last Saturday before Advent in some years and the penultimate in others. It is the bridge between ordinary time and the time of waiting. It is when faith and hope meet at their highest point before Christmas. And it is when my son especially hears the requests for the impossible." Third event, November 23rd, 1947. Padre Pio had a vision during Mass. He saw the future. He saw dozens of people over decades doing the sevenfold protocol at noon on November 23rd. He saw some obeying at the exact moment and receiving impossible miracles. And he saw others delaying, hesitating, arriving a few minutes late, and completely missing the grace. He saw Luciano Moretti arriving at 12:13 p.m. in 1978, and the gate closed. He saw Giuseppe Morelli doing the protocol at exactly noon in 1964, and his son addicted to heroin being completely cured in 7 days. He saw Maria Santos doing the protocol in 1973 at age 48, sterile for 22 years, and becoming pregnant 45 days later. He saw Jean-Pierre Dubois doing the protocol in 2019 at 12 p.m. sharp in a small chapel in Paris, and 72 hours later receiving a call from a Chinese investor he had never met, offering to save his company from bankruptcy after having a dream where Padre Pio told him to look for Jean-Pierre. Padre Pio said to Father Benedict, "The protocol works because it is an act of radical obedience at the right moment. God is not a magician. God is a father. And a father responds when a child obeys with total confidence. But timing matters because spiritual geometry is real. Just as there is a right time to plant and harvest, there is a right time to surrender impossibilities. And November 23rd at noon is that time. Once a year, for a few hours. If you obey, heaven responds. If you delay, you lose. It is not cruelty, it is divine order." Father Benedict documented everything, but the Capuchin Secret Archive kept this information restricted for decades. It was only in 2003, 35 years after Padre Pio's death, that Friar Anthony Benedetti, Father Benedict's nephew, found the documents and began to disclose them discreetly. And now, in 2025, you are watching this video on November 23rd. This is not a coincidence. You were guided here, and you have exactly the same choice that Emily had in 1952. You can do the protocol today at noon, or you can be like Luciano and delay 13 minutes because you have other priorities. Emily received 7 miracles. Luciano lost everything. The only difference was the timing, and the clock is ticking now. If it is already past noon where you are, you have lost this year. There is no second chance until November 2026. But if you still have time, if it is not yet noon, you can do exactly what Emily did, and heaven will respond. You who have something impossible in your life, something that the doctors have said has no cure, something that the lawyers have said has no solution, something that the banks have said there is no way out, something that people have said will not change. You have the opportunity to surrender it today, not tomorrow, not next week, today, at noon. Sevenfold protocol, 7 impossibilities or just 1, it doesn't matter. What matters is radical obedience at the right moment. Take a blank piece of paper, write your impossibilities, each one on a line. Go to a church. If you don't have time to go physically, stay where you are, but before the Blessed Sacrament in spirit. And at exactly noon, do the protocol. 7 steps, 7 folds, 7 surrenders. Burn the paper. Pray 7 Hail Marys. Save the ashes. And declare, Father, I know that you have heard me. I know that you have already answered. I thank you before I see, and I wait in peace. This video that you are watching now did not reach you by chance. This is one of the most difficult spiritual works I have ever done, because revealing truths that have been kept in secret archives for decades faces resistance, spiritual resistance, institutional resistance. Even resistance from within the church itself sometimes, from people who think that these teachings should remain restricted to only a few chosen ones. But Padre Pio did not teach the sevenfold protocol for it to remain hidden. He taught it so that desperate souls like Emily, like you, like me, could find a way out when all human doors are closed. And doing this work costs. It costs time. It costs research. It costs trips to archives. It costs translation of ancient documents in Italian and Latin. It costs equipment to record and edit, and it costs spiritually as well. Because every time powerful truths are released, there is battle. So if this video has helped you, if you are going to do the protocol today at noon, if you felt that you were guided here exactly at the right moment, I ask you for something. Use the super thanks down below, that golden heart. It's not just financial support. It's you saying, this work is important. These truths need to keep reaching more people. I become part of the mission to unleash what was hidden. When you click that golden heart, you become an accomplice of Padre Pio. You become a guardian of these revelations. You guarantee that the next video comes out, that the next truth is revealed, that the next desperate soul finds the door you found today. Be a part of it. It's not about me. It's about the mission. And you have been called to be a part of it. Now let me tell you something that will help you understand how to use the protocol even more deeply. Emily made 7 folds because she had 7 impossibilities. But you don't have to have 7. You could just have 1 impossible thing. You could have 3. You could have 5. The number doesn't matter as much as the surrender. Each fold represents a layer of control that you are releasing. First fold, I recognize that I can't solve this. Second fold, I renounce trying to force a solution. Third fold, I trust that God is already working. Fourth fold, I forgive whoever contributed to this. Fifth fold, I consecrate myself to the process. Sixth fold, I seal this with prayer. Seventh fold, I give thanks before I see it. 7 layers of surrender. That's why 7 folds. It's a process of dying to the ego and being born into faith. And there are 3 warnings Padre Pio gave, and they are absolutely critical. First warning, do not tell anyone what you wrote on the paper before you burn it. This is between you and God. If you keep telling people what you asked for, you dissipate the spiritual energy. It's like puncturing a tire. The pressure leaks out. Keep it secret until the miracles manifest. Then you can testify. But before, silence. Second warning, after burning the paper and doing the protocol, do not try to help God solve the problem. Do not go chasing after desperate human solutions. You have surrendered. Now wait. Of course, you continue doing your normal part. You keep working, caring, living. But you no longer get anxious trying to force doors open. You wait in peace. The doors will open. 1 per day or all at once. That varies, but they will open. Third warning, when the first miracle happens, give thanks immediately. Don't wait for all 7 to give thanks. Thank the first one, because gratitude is the key that opens the next door. Emily gave thanks when Michael passed the first night without pain. It was her gratitude that opened the door for the miracle of Ashley, and the gratitude for Ashley opened the door for Joseph, and so on. Gratitude in real time is spiritual fuel. So pay attention, observe. And when you realize that something impossible has started to change, stop everything and give thanks, right there, out loud if possible. Father, I saw, you are acting. I thank you, and I await the next. Now I want to hear from you. Write in the comments exactly this. I will do the protocol today at noon. Nothing more, nothing less. These 8 words, it's a public commitment. It's a declaration of faith. It's you saying to heaven, to earth, to yourself, I won't be like Luciano, who postponed it 13 minutes. I will be like Emily, who obeyed at the exact moment. When you write this in the comments, you create a spiritual accountability. You will feel a healthy weight to fulfill what you declared. And besides, when thousands of people write the same phrase, it creates a chain of collective faith that amplifies the spiritual strength of everyone. So write it now. I will do the protocol today at noon, and then come back here in the next few days and tell us what happened. I want to know. The community wants to know. And testimonies strengthen the faith of those who are still waiting. One last thing. If you are watching this video, and it's already past noon where you are, don't despair. You haven't lost it forever. You missed it this year, but you can start preparing for November 23rd, 2026. Mark it on the calendar, November 23rd, 2026. Start preparing a year in advance. Deep confession, life of prayer, regular fasting. Progressive renunciation of control. And when November 23rd, 2026 arrives, you will be so prepared that the protocol will be just the formalization of a surrender you have already lived for an entire year. And when that happens, the miracles are even more devastating. Emily didn't prepare a year in advance. She prepared for 3 days. And even then, she received 7 miracles. Imagine if she had prepared a year. Imagine if you prepare for a year. But if it's not yet noon where you are, don't waste time. Turn off this video, grab a blank piece of paper, write down your impossibilities, go to a church if you have time, and at exactly noon, do the protocol. 7 steps, 7 folds, 7 surrenders. And then you come back here and testify. Because your testimony may be the key that unlocks the faith of another person who is desperate. You were guided here. Now you become a guide for others. That is the cycle. Padre Pio guided Emily. Emily guided Father Benedict Nolan. Father Benedict Nolan guided Friar Anthony. Friar Anthony guided researchers. Researchers guided this channel. This channel is guiding you. And you will guide someone through your testimony, through your obedience, through your miracles. You become part of a chain of 107 years that began in 1918 when Padre Pio received the permanent stigmata on November 23rd. And it will continue until Christ returns. You are inside that chain now. Don't leave, obey, and testify.